I'm the co-founder of Kaleidoscope, which is a New York-based podcast studio. Our mission is to explain the new scientific renaissance, and we're very lucky to have some amazing partners to do that with. We work with Walter Isaacson, the author of the Elon Musk and the Steve Jobs and the Einstein biography, as a host on our network. And if anyone was at the panel yesterday with Google and AI EDU, we also released a podcast first trailer yesterday called Raising Kids in the Age of AI. So these are fascinating topics for us, and we think podcasting is the ideal medium to explore them. The category has exploded, driven in part by the intimacy of what feels like one-to-one communication instead of broadcast, which is one-to-many. And so the opportunity to listen whenever you want, wherever you want, the ability to find content which is perfectly suited to your needs is what has driven, I think, the explosive growth of the category, which I know we're going to talk about. Obviously, I'm also a startup founder, so I'm trying to figure out how to make our process as efficient as possible, getting the most leverage out of our time. And so, of course, we use AI audio tools. The most helpful one is actually not a very sexy one. It's called Descript, and it basically makes post-production editing as easy as editing a Google document. And so I don't feel like, wow, I'm on the front lines of the AI revolution when I'm using this software. It feels more like word processing, but the ability to create leverage from time it gives is extraordinary. Just this week, there's been both some extraordinary news in the world of AI audio. I'm not sure if did anyone see the Apple AirPods announcement? Yeah, so a few of you did. So basically, I mean, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Star Trek, it's been the dream of science fiction writers throughout the 20th century to have simultaneous live translation in an earpiece, and now Apple just announced it as a new product feature of their latest AirPods. On the other hand, a company out of LA gave an interview this week about how they're creating 3,000 podcast episodes per week using AI. And of course, this gives us some pause, because part of the reason the podcasting industry has been so successful is the trust that has been built between creators and audiences. And of course, flooding the ecosystem with commodity AI content can threaten some of that trust. No one better to have this conversation with than Mikhail, the co-founder of Go Audio. I want to hear all about your company. But first, of all the areas of technology, why did you choose audio?
I think because it really fits into human life like no other medium, right? So as we speak, your brain processes the information 35% faster than if you were reading it, right? And you can't read while cycling. You can't, or some of you can watch Netflix. Netflix when cooking. So audio is a really unique medium which allows us to do many things at once and faster. But the thing is that we are still broadcasting the exact same content to millions of people. And this is actually kind of my mission. This is actually the dream I have in terms of how we can change the world. If you imagine kind of a morning briefing that knows that you have 15 minutes until your train leaves. You have a 7-minute briefing, skips the football news you're not interested about, dives deep into the AI regulation stuff, and finally maybe answers your questions really simply.
Interactivity,
exactly, and I will probably go into that deeper. This is audio. This is really it's augmented intelligence in some way. It's not just listening passively. It's augmented intelligence from my perspective.
Responsive. What is your 5-year dream for where AI and audio can intersect, and what this will look like, sound like, feel like?
I think we're at the verge of kind of a real paradigm shift. So at this stage, audio is pretty much content, right? But my strong belief is that it will also move into interface. It will become the most important human interface, as we're talking about conversational, etc. And it will become infrastructure. And with this having in mind, I think we're acting on two dimensions. One is personalization. So the topic I strived before, content will become personal, and the other one is interactivity. So being able to, so to say, speak to content, get more information, get custom information.
Talking back to the podcast.
Exactly. And that's my dream. That's how I see the future, actually.
Let's talk about the present. Go Audio. You had a very exciting announcement this week. But just explain for this group, what is the product? How does it work? What's the technology behind it? And of course, importantly, who pays for it?
Yes. That's a couple of questions. Maybe you have to remind me of that. So let me first start with the announcement. So this morning we announced that we are producing 4 daily newscasts for Bild, the Bild news update, which we're of course very proud of, and we really think this can be just the starting point of really transforming general news into really topic-based news. If you think about your favorite football club, just the club update, it doesn't exist like in the morning. And
Bild is obviously one of the most prominent media brands in Germany. I mean, how did you sell them this opportunity? How did you get them excited about the opportunity of Go Audio?
I mean, the key selling point is really having a joint understanding on like what customers might like, and also, of course, maybe painting a vision and then starting from there. And I think the basic assumption is that the customer likes high quality audio, so they want that kind of human-like quality, even though, of course, there will always be a gap. And the second thing is then really to have the opportunity to personalize, to be much more specific, go into the customer's context. And this is what we're working on now. I mean, we're at day 1, but that's the plan. And
how does the product work? I mean, don't get too technical, but just from a high level. I think sometimes we talk about AI and it's such an enormous conceptual framework that we don't always even know exactly what we're talking about. So I think if you could just break down in a non-technical way exactly what the product does, that would be very helpful.
How I'm always trying to describe Go Audio is like, it's an audio factory. You can imagine it really as a physical factory. So we have some inbound where we get the information in the Bild case. It's the Bild.de news articles, which we automatically get in. Then we have kind of a smart configuration of large language models, which are configured in parallel, but also sequentially, who do the fact-checking, who do the article selection, so which really select, okay, which is the article that should be part of that newscast. And then finally going into the scripting. How does the script have to sound like to be really natural, how a human editor would do it? Then we have the TTS, the kind of the making script to sound, and basically this is then kind of the final step before we have the outbound, and the content leaves the factory, and we also distribute it really straight into the podcast platforms. So it's an automated workflow, but the important thing, and this is really what I'm always trying to emphasize, is the human in that factory. So we've built our platform in a way that the editors, our editors, but also Bild's editors, can at any point in time understand what's going on within each step, but also across the whole workflow. And I think the combination, is the winning or the secret sauce. So really combining machine and humans in a smart way.
Well, see, I'm a journalist and work with a bunch of journalists. Journalists are probably among the more suspicious group when it comes to AI. So are there any specific challenges when selling into a group like that?
I mean, I have only 18-month experience in like the journalism field. I think across those 18 months, I think the sentiment changed from skepticism and like only seeing the risks into curiosity, and now real, let's say, desire to get behind the driving wheel. So to be not on the passenger side. And I think this has changed tremendously. In the last month, it's like the conversations are super constructive, they're super future-oriented, and it's real fun.
I've noticed the same thing. I mean, in our work, we have this portfolio of podcasts, right? We have kind of the opposite problem. Like, we have a lot of audio and video, but not that much text, right? And so this week we had 3 podcast launches. I mentioned Walter Isaacson, the thing with Google, another thing about this crime lab that solves a lot of cold cases in the US. But we don't have a newsletter product. So do we need to hire a head of newsletters? Maybe, but there are all kinds of interesting AI tools bubbling where we can basically take credit more for our own work rather than replacing people who are already working with us. So that's pretty exciting. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, at DLD this week on AI sovereignty and European AI. I'm curious, there are obviously big US players who are very sophisticated and well capitalized when it comes to AI audio. How and why do you compete with them?
Great question. I think the short answer is proximity. So really trying to work backwards, on the one hand from the listener, so from the audience, but then also working backwards from the really day-to-day workflows, but also issues the publishers have, right? And trying to understand this, being to really custom and tailor a workflow or a solution onto their problems, I think is also a bit of a cultural thing, right? So I think tech and AI in general, they are global, but audio and news, they are local, right? So, and we are really trying to be that glue between both worlds here. So, I mean, I've been talking a lot about the kind of the future and opportunities. Also, you've been doing some great storytelling, and you've built a company around it, successful company around it. So how do you perceive maybe the risk, but also maybe the opportunity to create multiple versions of the stories you're telling?
I think it's a really good question. Although I will say I prefer being the interviewer than the interviewee. But no, so look, one of the interesting things you see really clearly in the data...
We're talking to a customer.
is that listening, podcast listening, dramatically falls during the holidays in the US. And that's because people driving have their kids in the car. So they can't listen to the podcast they normally listen to. Either the kids find it boring, either it's inappropriate, whatever it may be. And so one of the things we're thinking about is we have a partnership we're exploring with one of the Formula One teams at the moment to tell the inside story of next racing season, the engineering, the history, the drivers, really from a technology point of view. We were thinking, what if we take all that work and put the scripts into some kind of AI model and say, create a new version of this script, but that's appropriate and engaging for 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds. And so essentially, again, that point I made about getting maximum leverage out of our work, we don't need to fully hire a new team to reversion a family-oriented version of one podcast. We could simply, in theory, and we're going to try it out, who knows, be able to create 2 versions from the same input. And that would, of course, potentially be, at scale, a huge thing. I'll just add one more thing. One of my first podcasts I did, which was in 2019, did quite well in the US, and then it was licensed and translated manually into German, Spanish, and Norwegian, or Danish, I think, which was expensive, time-consuming, etc. Now the podcast I host every week, Tech Stuff on iHeart, is translated using AI into multiple languages every week at virtually no cost. So I think there's this extremely exciting long-term future, but there's also the less sexy but nonetheless very relevant tool-based AI, which is honestly what I find most intriguing, what it sounds like Go Audio is perfectly primed to address.
Yeah, and it really resonates with one of my strongest beliefs, which is that kind of the human will always be the spark, right? And AI can provide the scale. And sounds really cool.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.